Hi everyone, today I'm going to share with you some of my favorite tools and supplies as well. So I've had lots and lots of time to, I guess you could say, weed through many tools and supplies and really just narrow it down to what I really prefer to use on the bench. Now, I'm not sponsored and I'm not getting kickbacks or anything in any way, shape, or form from any of these tools or supply manufacturers or whatever. I'm simply just sharing what works, the tools and the supplies that I prefer to use at the bench. Now, I'm pretty picky, as you know, with my tools and the things that I use, so I hope that you'll find that these tools work just as well for you as they do for myself. So let's get started. Before we get started, please note that if you use any of the information in this video, you're doing so at your own risk. I'm simply sharing the supplies and tools that I'm very comfortable with and I've used for a long time, and I've just found that they're very dependable. So I just want to pass this on to you. So I've been breaking things so that you don't have to, and I'll tell you the reasons why as I'm going through this. So hopefully this will save you some money. Now, these are expensive. I'll just tell you that right now, but they work fantastic, and you really do get what you pay for with these things. I've had these for probably 20 years, and they are just as sharp as the day I used them, like pulled them out of the package. Okay, so these ones here are, the part number of these, this clipper here is EREM, so EREM, that's the make, and the number is 776E. See that right there? So if you're working on circuit boards or anything where you need a really nice close cut, a nice clean cut, you put this thing onto the circuit board. Say there's a lead poking through the circuit board, you put this thing down, go clip, and you almost can't feel on the board. Now, a lot of the times that is necessary, and a lot of the times it isn't. If you need a little bulge because you're soldering through a circuit board, you want to make sure that this isn't, laying on the actual solder ball itself, or it'll cut a nice flat spot across the solder ball. And if the solder ball is big enough on the board, right, if the little bump is big enough, if it sits on either side, it will cut it completely flat. You'll actually see a clean lead, and you'll almost see where the solder is taken to the sides. These things are really fantastic. So I really like these clippers right here. And again, when I'm working on anything that has to do with circuit boards, these things are right beside me all the time. Word of caution with these things: never ever clip any big wire with it. So follow the directions. They have a list for as big as you can clip. If you clip big wires with these things, you'll end up with clippers that look like this. You'll have to take this off. The steel is has a really good temper to it, okay? And very brittle stuff. So these ones here, they're still sharp. They work great. It's just that the tip went away. So you got to be very careful with these things. So for example, you wouldn't want to cut a piece of like solid 14 wire or anything like that with these things. I've been working on things and grabbed the wrong pair and not thinking and gone clip and go, oh, they're still good. Thankful, but eventually it will catch up with you. So just follow the gauge rating for these things on the package. And again, I use these things in tube amps, stranded wire, things like that. If I want a nice clean cut in point-to-point wiring, or on something, if I need to get into something that has just a little teeny, say a little tip of wire sticking off, you can just get in there and just go clip. It's so incredibly sharp. They'll find any little piece of wire you need to clip, and it'll just take off. Now, of course, whenever you're doing anything with these things, you always want to use the appropriate eye protection, because when you clip things on these things, a lot of the times the little piece you clip will go flying. So that's a real word of precaution, and I can't stress that enough, because I've made the mistake. Okay, so don't make the mistake. Always wear eye protection when you're using any of these things. Very important. So here is my damaged pair and my damaged clipper and my very good one right here. Okay, so the second one up, which is very good, is this one right here. It's Lindstrom. You can see right here, made in Sweden, and there's the part right there, and they tell you the copper wire ratings right here. Very good. These things also will cut very close. So these would be on the list of quality. Again, these are very good as well, but on my list, I shouldn't say quality, but I should say on the list, my pick, if I wanted to have a second to this, I would go for these. Okay. So these are very good. Pretty much the same as this, all the same warnings, everything. You don't want to go too thick. And as you can see, the finish on these is just fantastic. Okay. Two very, very good clippers right there. Now, if you want something that's pretty much generic and you're not so worried about like, flush cutting and things like that, I guess you could say more of a disposable pair, right? If these things, you're not going to spend a whole lot of money on these things. These are good. So these are Xuron and they're 9200s as a part number, I believe. Yes, 9200. Great. Again, you want to follow the wire gauge rating for these things. I've cut 14 gauge wire multiple times with these things, no problem, solid copper, and probably even larger than that, and I've had no issues. But again, follow the manufacturer's specs if you want maximum life out of these things, right? Because you know what they do? They have a machine, and they'll have a piece of wire, and the thing is just clipping continually, and they'll count the amount of clips until it gets dull or it breaks, right? So I'm sure they have piles and piles of little pieces of wire at these factories that they're, testing these things on, right? So those are my 3 favorite clippers, and tested throughout time. I cannot tell you the amount of time. Again, I've probably had these for 20 years, and they're as sharp as the day they were made. So you know what they say about Swiss stuff, right? There it is. And these are very good as well. These will last a very long time. And again, good for everything kind of idea, right? So if you want to go anything bigger, there are larger clippers that are a lot tougher. They kind of look like a shell, and they're made to be quite a bit tougher, so you can cut larger pieces of wire. I think I have a pair back here somewhere. Like these. I've had these for a long, long time. And I'm not scared of cutting anything with these. I've cut everything right down to resistance wire with this thing. It's another thing. There's another tip for you, and I neglect to mention this all the time. Never cut nichrome wire unless you want to buy new clippers. Okay? A nichrome wire will destroy almost any of these types of clippers if you cut them. So keep that in mind. Resistance wire, bad news. Okay? Keep that in mind. These things may have seen nichrome wire at some time. I think they have. Let's see if I can show you what nichrome wire will do. Let's see there. There you go. See that? That's what nichrome wire will do to clippers. All right, so these things have seen it all. And I use this for very just, brutal stuff. When I'm cutting that 10 gauge solid copper for the tips for my Weller, which I'll show you here in a moment. It's another one of my preferred tools. These are the pair that I go to. So it's basically squeeze and then give it a twist and it snaps off. So these are kind of brute force. Now keep in mind with these things that they can also be very dangerous. This is something that I've done, and I'll share this with you too as well. This is something I just remembered. I had a pair of these clippers one time. And what you're doing is when you're trying to clip something that's really hard, say you're like, oh man, I just got to get through this and I don't care about the clippers, and you're squeezing these things. I've had these snap right here. And you know what I've done is I've driven my fingernail even shorter than this, right? I've driven it right into my hand. So I've had this huge gash in my hand when this thing broke. So I didn't actually get damaged from the clipper snapping. I got damaged from my own hand doing this squeezing so incredibly hard. They just went bam and they snapped. So just some experience through time. Always keep that in mind when you're clipping things. A lot of the times now I find myself doing this to limit the amount of pressure that I put on the actual plier. Just a silly mistake I made way in the past, right? So, and normally my nails are even shorter than this, right? Just can't keep up with everything. But at any rate, so just keep that in mind. If you're, squeezing on something like this, be very careful because you're very tempted to bury this into here, right? And then you're doing this extremely hard. And as you can see, this is aiming already. Here are some tools that don't really have a necessarily important name. It's just their function that I find very good. So these are Mastercraft. It comes from a store that's local up here. And I find myself using these long pair of pliers a lot. And I keep going back to these because they have these little ribs in here and they hold things nice and tight. And they get into really tight spaces. Now, you don't need to buy this particular brand, but as long as they have the function of this, so they're long and they have the handles down here and they have this little ribbed area. I very rarely find myself using the clipper on any of these things, right? They just allow you to get in. So like if you're, say, working on point-to-point wiring and you have a piece of wire going through, say, one of the lugs on a tube socket, you can grab it and twist it and do all these things. Get way down in there. And these things work very good. Again, this is Mastercraft. It's just a local manufacturer. And I've had these forever. I don't even know if they even make these anymore, but this can be found at pretty much any type of a tool store, right? I was never a fan of these things because they always end up coming out. And in many of the tools, I've even removed them like this. You'll see that they're not even in here anymore. Usually what I do is I do this. So I use my finger as the spring, basically. I do this all the time. So you'll find yourself with these things a lot. Sometimes you'll catch yourself, depending on the way you're doing this, you'll catch yourself in these things. So, in fact, I don't even know why I've left these in there, probably because they still kind of work. But, yeah, anyways, very beneficial pair of pliers, having them long like this. You'll find yourself defaulting to these things all the time. You'll be looking for this specific set. And I can't tell you how important the little ridges are in here. If you get a pair that's flat that doesn't have the ridges, and you have a pair that has the ridges, or a plier that has the ridges, you'll find yourself continually going for this one. And I love these as well. You see how they have the bend? It allows you to get into small areas, but this does not have, as you can see, it's flat in there. It does not have those little ridges in there. If they had made this with little ridges in the end, I would probably never use these, because you can use these for pretty much the same thing all the time. It's just, the angle. Very, very handy tools to have, and you can tell these are, well used. I've had these forever, and I'm always looking for these. And, just a standard pair of long nose pliers will work well. And you can do that. You can see I've actually put some silicone, or no, this was epoxy. I put some epoxy in here to stop the handles from slipping off. It's a real problem with these things. With any of these tools, after a while, the handles, they just end up coming off like this, right? So I haven't done anything with these yet. And yes, that is an aspect of these things that absolutely drives me nuts. But yeah, so there you have it. So 3 tools here that are very handy to have at the bench. And if you do, I'm telling you, you're going to be grabbing these all the time. These here are my go-to pair for what I do. Again, no actual product names or anything. It's really important, just the length. They're very long, and their function is more important in this case. Here's something that's a little bit more common. So these lighted magnifiers, again, the brand really isn't important. This has no real name on it. This is just something from overseas. And just by looking at it, you can find these. Just type in lighted magnifier and you'll see one of these things immediately. These things work very well. You'll find yourself getting in there and bending the metal in the switch area here so that the switch works properly. It's common with these things. You can never have too many of these things. I'm always losing one, so I have 2. It'll get misplaced. It'll slide under, a piece of machinery or something, and I can't find it for a while, so I'm always looking for the other one. And, I've got different shapes and sizes of magnifiers. I find myself using these things a lot, especially if you're looking at say, a circuit board and there's a very small part number on a surface mount component, or just anything that's really small. You can see how close this is to the mat and how well that's magnifying the actual mat still. This one here is pretty good. The magnification isn't as extreme in this. You probably put something under here to show you. Let's see. Grab this nice carbon composition resistor. So you can see that. It's nice. That's quite a bit of magnification there. I'll turn on the light, and that adds to it as well. And this one here, the magnification is a bit more extreme. As you can see, you can get this closer to the actual resistor. So I find myself using these a lot. See that? You can actually see the little seam in the carbon composition resistor there, going all the way to that end. So these are very handy. If you don't have one of these things on your bench, get a couple, because I wish I bought another 3 or 4 of these things. I'd have these things everywhere. So they're really cheap. Again, I don't have a brand name for these things because it's been so long. I don't even know what they are. Nothing's written on these things. But if you just type in, battery powered LED magnifier or whatever, these things will come up. Lots of YouTube content creators have these things on their bench. I see these things all over the place as well. Here's one of my preferred magnifiers, and you'll notice that this is a lot different than the other ones that are out there. A lot of them are round, and I find that there's a lot less lens distortion having this kind of a rectangular shape to it, and that's why I went for this. Now, I use this all the time, and I really, really like this particular magnifier. It's lit on the bottom with LEDs all the way around, and they're very bright. So the make of this is Circuit Test, and as you can see, the model number is FCM-930 LED. Let's see if I can zoom on into this. This has a stand that's on the floor, so it has a gooseneck on it here, so you can adjust this. So the actual stand sits on the floor. I really can't focus on that. I'll lift the stand up here. Maybe I can get that in. There's a bit of a design tweak that I would have done if I would have designed this, but I'll talk about that in a moment. So that there is a part number right there, and yeah, just great, absolutely great. So you can see here, I'll put this under here, look at that, and of course you can bring it much further away, right? So it just works very, very well. I'm very happy with this thing. So one of the biggest tricks in buying these things is I find that you'll see a lot of them out there. They almost look like a toilet seat. They're round. They have a little thing here and then this little cap that lifts up. Looking through that for a very long period of time really bothers my eyes. So this here, I find very, very little eye fatigue through this, just because of the shape of the lens. And when I found this, I'm like, finally, somebody made something that you can look through for a while without your eyes going crazy. So it has a long gooseneck here. I'll just lift this thing up onto the bench. Hopefully I can get it here. I might bump the mic. If I do, sorry. There's the base. Okay. And that's me bumping the camera stand because it's sticking way up above the camera right now. Now, when you move the head around, if the head's in front of it like this, no problems. But if you run the head off to the side, because you can turn this around, you can see where you would already run into a problem. And of course, if you ran the head off to this side, you know what happens, right? The thing tips. So this should have been completely round, and this should have been in the center, and everything would have been okay. If you add some weight to this, it'd be fine. It's just that this has to be pretty much in front of where you're looking. So if this is pointed here, then obviously, I'll just put this back on the floor again. It's heavy. If that's pointed in that direction there, then of course this is going to have to be in this direction here, right? So you can see if you turn it around, it would get, kind of tipsy. That's the only issue with this thing. And it's an easy workaround. You just got to keep your mind on where the bottom of it is. Right now it's right in line with this, and it's, very sturdy. And it has that gooseneck, so it's, very flexible, and it stays where you put it. You see that? Just absolutely stays where you put it. So very good. Now, I purchased this at a local company. It's called RP Electronics. Again, I'm not sponsored by these people, and he'll probably want to know where all of the sales are coming from, because the last time I did this and I mentioned another supplier, his website crashed. But at any rate, no kickbacks from this. It's just a product that works, and I'm happy to share that. So I haven't asked him for kickbacks or anything like that on this. It's just something I've bought. I'm always looking for new tools that are going to make my life easier, right? And this is one of those tools that really did the job. This is very close. This would be a second to owning one of those microscopes, those AmScope microscopes that I have. So down the road, I'll do a complete review on that, and I'll show you exactly how they work. And I'll go right over the AmScope. If you want one of those things, they're fantastic as well. That's what I use for all my surface mount stuff. And for larger surface mount stuff, this is absolutely fine, right? This works great too. In fact, I think the viewing area is a little bit more comfortable than actually using a stereoscope, right? So there it is. That's the magnifier that I prefer. And I prefer them so much, I have 3 of them. Here's a soldering iron that I use in place of my Hakko. Okay, so I have an FX-888D, which is the blue Hakko. Some people say Hakko, however you want to say it. I find myself saying Hakko all the time, but I believe it's pronounced Hakko. The Hakko works very, very well, and this is another one of those brands. I think this brand is sold to RP because it's the only place I've seen Circuit Test, but it's built very well, this stuff. I've had these for a while now. And one of the things that I really enjoy about this is the entry for the temperature. You basically just push up or down and the thing moves, okay? Whereas with the Hakko unit, I find that I'm continually either pushing the wrong button or I'm getting into a menu or doing something with that. And if you own one of the Hakko FX-888Ds, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I think at one time I tried to adjust the temperature and I even went into the calibration menu at one time. This is extremely easy to use. You flick the switch, it goes to the temperature you've set, and you just hold either the up or down to adjust it. It's an 85 watt device. So this is what they've claimed it to be. I haven't actually tested it for 85, but it's claimed to be 85, and it uses a head that's the identical pretty much to the Hakko unit. Of course, the wiring's different and everything. You know how when the 936 came out, right? You know, every manufacturer was trying to copy it. This uses the same tip as the 888, and it uses the same tip as the early 936 and everything. That's one of the biggest things I need to stress about soldering. A lot of people want to buy these soldering irons with this little pencil thin tip, and the tip is actually part of the heating element. Now, if you're looking for that type of accuracy, where you need to have something that's attached to the heating element, okay, that's absolutely fine. And I've been working on every type of circuit board and soldering every type of IC that you could imagine. And of course, it goes beyond soldering with an iron. But what I'm saying is that anything I've needed to use an iron for, this with the correct tip would be absolutely fine. And it's the same with Hakko FX888D. Any tip that you put in there that's suited for the job will work fine. The problem with the irons, you'll find another one if you look on the RP website. You'll find another one that's like this. It's much bigger display. I really like the display on it. It's got these big numbers on it. It's you could view it from across a room if you needed to, but it has the actual iron that has a very small little, I guess you could say the element is part of the tip, all right? So and it's long. Now, if you want something like that, that might be desirable for you, but you always have to keep in mind is that a tip is something that will go away after a while, right? They all break down and go away. So when the tip goes away, the whole actual element and everything is gone as well. So you have to replace the whole thing as a unit. Whereas with something like this, with all of these, Hakko units in these, you can see it just slips over this little element right here, and you can so quickly replace these. And there are so many of these tips on the market in every shape and size, tip, flat, curved, cut off, every type of tip. To not go with a design that uses that early 936 is just, you're just asking to spend money and just making your life difficult. So whether you want to go with the Hakko, which I have right here, it's actually on right now, so I have to be careful with this, and see if I can get enough cord on this one here, the 888, which is a great iron. I absolutely love this Hakko right here, absolutely. These irons here, this is beside my surface mount station. Okay, so my surface mount, I've had these for quite a while now, and all my surface mount work is done with these things. And of course, this would be beneficial because I believe this is rated at 65. Yeah, these are 65 watts, and if I remember correctly, I think these are 85. This is an 85 watt. Yeah, 85 watts there. So rated at 85, 24 volts, 85 watts. Now, the nice thing about these two is you can go about buying these as well, and they plug right in. So these have got this long flat tip, so if you want to get to ICs, you can do that as well. I'll do a separate video on these. I had to do a bit of research on these because they had one that was specified for this, and the one that looks like it wasn't specified was actually the one to get. And I'd have to find the part number or even the packaging of this device. And they come with a neat little stand and everything as well. The stand for this also is some sort of heat-resistant plastic, it seems. This isn't metal or, aluminum or whatever. Yeah, I get that all the time. Aluminum is metal. Yeah, I know this. That's how I default. When I say metal, I think of magnetism. But yes, this is an aluminum or some similar form of metal where that the Hakko has. This is a much lighter base, but it's some sort of heat-resistant plastic. So to give you an idea here, okay, here's some solder, okay, it's on, and it's hot, okay? So we can go to something that would get affected by this, like, say, the edge. Okay, I'll put this right on the edge. It's on there right now, holding it there. And if you take this away, there's a bit of solder on there. It's like nothing has happened, right? So some sort of heat-resistant plastic, I imagine, to some form of extent, and it seems to work very well. Another very nice thing about this that I really like, and I just about forgot to mention, is this thing will go to sleep if you don't touch the handle for a while. So it'll go to sleep, and then if you just move the handle or just touch it, it wakes right up again. And it's right up to temp, like really fast here. Maybe I can even demonstrate this. Wouldn't that be a good idea? How about actually demonstrating this? I don't think I'll be able to demonstrate the sleep cycle because I'd have to wait for it to go to sleep and then come back. So I'll plug this in and turn this on. Okay, so I have it rated at 350 and it starts out like so. And as you can see, it counts up very quick. I change everything to degrees C because my calibrator is in degrees C. So whenever I calibrate anything, it's in degrees C. So you can see how quickly this counts up. So this has got to get to 350 and it gets there very, very fast. And it's ready to use right now. So what'll end up happening is it does go to sleep. And if you let it sleep too long, I find the element just goes right off. It'll turn the thing right off. And you can't turn it back on unless you cycle this and turn it back on again, right? So a couple of very neat features with this. Getting into the menu in this thing is very like binary 1 and 0 kind of thing. You'll see if you get the manual to change this from degrees Fahrenheit to degrees Celsius. Get the light off this so you can maybe see this a bit better. Very nice display. Only downfall with this thing that I would think of is maybe its odor. This smells like 1980s circuit boards and it doesn't seem to go away. Yes, it does. Very 1980s circuit board smelling. If you've been in the game long enough, you know what I'm talking about. So it has that smell. But other than that, if you enjoy that, hey, it could be a bonus, right? So yeah, it's a fantastic, fantastic iron. I often get the question, Paul, what is your favorite type of solder? Now, I have lots of solders that I really like. You know, I like Kester and Aim and Multicore, all sorts of different types of solders, but I keep finding myself going back to this stuff, so this must be the good stuff. So I have 3 different sizes. I have 0.6, 0.8, and 1 millimeter. This is kind of, you can use this for everything type of solder. I use this for 0402 work. This is the solder that gives me that nice chrome finish look, like a little solder connections, almost look like little mirrors. This is the stuff that does that. So that's the brand that does it. Each one of the sizes will do the same thing. It's just that sizes are optimized for your work, right? So this here will work for pretty much everything. It's just that you will use more of this for larger work. All right, so 0.6 millimeter. The product ID number for this is 106902. This is middle of the road. So this will be basically through-hole circuit board work and vacuum tube stuff, you know, tube sockets and things like that. So if you're not going too small in your work, you would want to go to 0.8 millimeters. Nice middle of the road type of solder. Okay, so this is 10685. So it's PID 10685 for this one right here. Very nice stuff. And then this is really big stuff. This is if you want to solder tabs to chassis. This is 1 millimeter. And this is 10684. I don't find myself using this very often, this particular solder, but if you have lots of larger work that you want to do, 1 millimeter might be for you. Again, PID 10684 is the number for this. Okay. Now, when you want to solder things to chassis, I get this question, and I've showed this before, but I'll just quickly show this again for any of you that are new. This is the tip that I make out of number 10 wire. It's very simple. Basically, it's a horseshoe, and you slide the 2 nuts on the end, and then you bend them up, and then hook it through here, and then tighten these up, and you have your soldering iron tip. Great for soldering large coax connectors. Whenever you want to solder anything to a chassis, like if you have a big tab and you have a big, heavy metal chassis, this will heat the solder up enough so that it will take, in conjunction with some RA flux, which I will show you in a minute as well. If you make any of these modifications to your irons like this, and you put a jumper in here, you're doing so at your own risk. This is an older device. If you have a chance at swap meets online auctions to get an older D550, I would highly suggest that. So the older D550s have the nut that screws into the end and it tightens down here. The newer D550s have got a collar with a bunch of screws in it that you tighten down. And I think you'll find that you'll replace those collars a little more often than you would this. So for example, I've never replaced these since I've owned this, and I've owned this thing forever. And I had a newer one and I replaced 3 collars on it. Okay, so again, new versus old. So if you have a chance to get an older D550, that's the thing to do. I've also reversed the switch connections inside. So you see it says 260, 200, so it's click 260, click 200, okay? So you can hear the double click there. So I find I want maximum heat when I squeeze it. squeeze the trigger on the D550, so that's right there. So now it's 200, 260, and I've just done that so that I don't have to be finicky, and when you grab it, you're kind of going, where's the first click? Oh, there it is. But you're tempted just to pull all the way back with the soldering iron, right? So another little trick that I've done with this here. Very handy to use, this thing here, right here. Soldering coax connectors, this will be your best friend. I'm telling you this. This is the rosin flux that I use. Again, this is the, all solder has, well, most of it does anyways. Electronic solder has flux in the core, all right? Adding this stuff and flooding the area whenever you're doing circuit boards is highly advisable. And that, of course, again, this takes the oxidization off the surface and stops it from oxidizing while you solder it, and it gives you your nice finish. So the product number of this is MG Chemicals, is 835. So this is the rosin flux here, right? And then 1L is the size of the bottle. I put it into a bag just in case I spill any, because this stuff is very sticky, really sticky. And if for some reason the bottle was to ever leak, it would go into the bag, so it's kind of secondary protection. All right, so this is the stuff I use. I've tried, I can't tell you how many different types of rosin flux. All right, I've tried the, let's call it opaque stuff. I've tried the stuff that looks like a cream, tried it all. All right, this stuff by far is the absolute best. So they've got something right. I have to tell you that. That company has got something right. Here's the wire I use for most of my projects. And it's 18 gauge and it's rated for 600 volts, and it's got, a pretty high temperature rating, 105 degrees C. So it's really good stuff. The cheaper wire you'll find when you solder it, the insulation will crawl back and things like that. This doesn't do that. You'd really have to have heat on here for a long period of time to cause any issues like that. So I have lots and lots of colors here, but if you take one of the product numbers here, we'll just take this one. This is black. So you'll take the product number off of this one, and you can, find all the other colors, like red and orange and brown and green and blue and yellow and white and all sorts of different colors down here. So there is the ISBN number, so you always start with that and then go through the entire ISBN number and then end up with that. So it's one long complete number. And then that's the part number of the wire right there. So I'll get that a little closer if you need that. You'll find yourself, if you're doing a lot of DC work, you'll find yourself using red and black the most. All right, probably two of the most common colors. When you're working in chassis and things like that, you'll find yourself using brown. You can see how well I've used this. This is for the filament lines that you saw in that radio restoration. And, lots of different colors. There's orange and what is this? Have I got two colored? I have two colored blacks on the bench here. There's a red, white, yellow, purple, green, gray. I think I grabbed two black colors. There's supposed to be a blue here in place of this, but you'll find it anyway. At any rate, just enter one of these product numbers and you'll get a whole list of the colors that they sell. And I have lots of this stuff. This is about half the inventory. I have brand new stuff here as well. So I always keep lots of this on hand because I'm always using wire, especially if you're rebuilding these older radios. A lot of the plastic or whatever it is, rubber, whatever kind of wire they're using in there, some of it's kind of a really odd compound. It just breaks down. It almost turns to dust, some of it. Some of it you press on it and it almost goes into a dust-like material. It's really strange stuff in the earlier radios. So I find myself using lots and lots of this stuff. So this is my preferred wire. This is the stuff that I keep going to. The stuff that you see in all my restorations. If there's a tool or supply that you're specifically interested in, and I haven't talked about it before, definitely feel free to leave a comment here on the Patreon platform, and I'll add it to a list next time I do any type of video on the tool, or maybe even supply or product or whatever I have that you're interested in. I'll talk about it a little bit. And if you're enjoying these videos, don't forget to tap the heart symbol. All right, until next time, take care, and I hope you found this video beneficial. Bye for now.